Yes, just making sure. Hello, it's me.
No, Stevie, don't
I was
ruin
wondering about fantasy.
Yet another episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast ruined by Stevie Collier.
I was surprised how well my voice came out with that. Okay, hello and welcome to the Fantasy Fiends podcast, where we discuss everything fantasy and fiendish. I'm Stevie Collier, and I'm here with my co-host, Andy Peliquin, and we are joined today with Andy, Aaron Michael Hall.
Hello.
Sorry.
No problem. Great to be here with you guys.
Your voice is so soft. It's like you could do your own voiceovers for your books, unless they're dark fantasy.
A little bit, just a touch.
A little bit. Okay, then you're out. You can't do it then. Yeah, and you know what? I think you've been a fan of the Fantasy Fiends podcast as well for a while. I always see you around, and we really appreciate the support.
Oh, absolutely. I love you guys.
Yeah, you can just say it. You love me, but not Andy. It's
the man bun. That's what does it.
Yeah, exactly. That's really what it is. Mm-hmm. That's why so many women watch the show or listen to it.
And yet the only person chatting in the live chat is a dude.
As so far as you never know. So before we begin, has anything cool happened to anybody this week? Anything cool, nerdy, geeky, fantastical?
Yeah, I just got the audiobook of Child of the Night Guild. It just went live yesterday. Very excited about that.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How ironic, because The Four Territories was just released as an audiobook this week.
I saw that. I saw your Facebook post, and I was like, ooh, this is going to be fun.
Oh, man. I like listening to it more than I like reading it. Doug Tisdale does a fantastic job. It's like, I get all giddy. People asked me at the gym why I was smiling. I was like, I'm listening to my book. And
I listened to mine a couple times when it first came out.
It's kind of like surreal, right, Aaron?
Oh, absolutely. And I love Victor Bavine because I love listening to him do all the Driss novels. And so when he was able to do my book, and I just love, I love his voice.
It's kind of like a dream come true.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I listened to the book Orconomics, which some people have heard of. It was a bestseller for a while, did very well. And Doug did that book as well. And it was kind of cool for his producer to contact me. And I was like, awesome.
Nice.
Definitely do it. So if you're listening or watching, go check out all three of our audiobooks available on audible.com. Free for a 30-day trial. That's it for this episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast. And today is going to be a very, very cool episode. And before we it's in the title. We're talking languages, people, and it's going to be freaking cool because Andy and I both love talking about languages, and Aaron has actually succeeded in creating one, or I think more than one, right, Aaron?
More than one, but it's basically the one is the largest one for the Epic Fantasy series. I have smaller ones, but yes, mainly the Epic Fantasy though.
Do you give it away as an Excel spreadsheet for your fans?
No, now I have put some of it on the website. So there are about 200 words altogether, but there's going to be, I'm still adding to it. So there'll be a dictionary that will be available. And I usually, if I'm at the convention, that's something that the people at the convention get when they purchase one of the books.
That's pretty awesome.
What a great reader magnet. I mean, you would have sold me because if somebody puts that much time into their world, I want to be a part of it.
Oh, cool.
I started with creating. What's up?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say with the Four Territories, I started with the language first and got 10 words in and scrapped it and just started writing the book. It's more difficult than you think it is, with verb tenses. Do you even want tenses, stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. I think people complicate it a little bit too.
Do they?
I think they do because it depends on what grammar rules you're trying to follow or what language rules you're trying to follow. But I like phonetic language, and I don't know, English, if you're trying to use English, English is a difficult language actually, because there's so many different ways to say one thing. And, these words can mean this or they can mean that. And, all
Mhm.
the different rules. And you need to have your basic rules and your basic guidelines, but you don't need to overcomplicate it. You know,
I always thought it was so complicated because I read The Art of Language Invention by David Peterson, the guy who did what is it? It's Khal Drogo's language. What is that in?
Dothraki.
Yeah, exactly. She does with the accent. That's awesome. So cool. Yeah, and his book is like, it starts off simple and then it just goes way over my head, like 70% in. I'm just like, wow, this guy is a master. Like that's all he does basically. And he helped with no, I was gonna say Avatar, but he didn't do Avatar. It was a different guy. But he's done other like big TV shows, and I love that. It made me like Game of Thrones even more to think that they did that, you know. Andy, you were gonna say something?
Well, I was going to ask you, Aaron, what grammar, like what language structure is your language based on?
Mine.
Yeah.
Honestly, well, I love Arabic, and I
Mm.
love Hebrew, and I love Amharic, and the different sounds and the tenses and for those languages, and Klingon too, actually.
Whoa,
Honestly,
yes.
yeah,
I could talk
because
about
yeah,
some Klingon.
I used to speak Klingon back in the day, long time ago.
You are
Uh,
seriously the most awesome woman ever. That is so cool.
you.
It's on
I loved
Duolingo,
it.
by the way. So cool.
So it turns out that I am the least nerdy person in this particular conversation.
I think you're nerdy when it comes to grammar and being a grammar Nazi.
and
Ah,
comic books and other things.
You're
Yes.
like the
When
Marvel
it comes,
king.
oh, cool.
You knew who
yes.
Moon Knight was. I'm sorry, Aaron. Go ahead with you.
Oh,
You
you're.
were at Klingon.
Oh no. Because different when I have like guardians and a Nazar of this land called Afaria, and when they speak the language, it's more melodic. But when I have these giant beings, these Thessalonians, when they're speaking it, it's more Klingonish because they put the different stresses on the different the vowels and whatnot. So, I mean, I do it when I have like samples on my website or whatnot. I do
Hmm.
all the different voices, and people are like, "Wait a minute, was that you?"
Whoa.
I'm like, "Yeah, that was me." And they said, "Well, was that you?" I said, "Well, yeah, because I can go very high, or I can, get your voice down low, 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 or
Whoa.
you can go high." So,
And that's where
whichever.
your voice rests, right, at a higher pitch level.
Yeah,
It seems
that
like.
this is normal for me right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually so Andy met my brother's girlfriend who is half Ukrainian, half Russian, and everybody disagreed with me that when you speak Russian deeper, you sound more Russian. And her grandparent, I met them last weekend. Her grandparents speak no English, barely even hello and yes. It's like they're so stuck in Russian, which is so awesome. It's like a time capsule of Russia has been brought over, and they had no idea what I was saying. I was like, "Watch this," and I went, "Das svidaniya," and they just exploded with laughter. And they said I sounded like the Russian mafia, but they still said. I asked them like, "Do I sound more Russian?" Like, yet, yet,
Yet, yet.
yeah. Um, So you spoke Klingon. You gotta touch on this a little bit. I know that's more sci-fi, but I'm
I love
like,
sci-fi.
oh yeah, I do too, for sure.
Yeah, well, no, because that's why. Because, well, I got it from my mom, and she always loved science fiction, and so we always used to watch Star Trek. And then you
Hmm.
know how the Klingons were in the beginning, but then when we got to TNG, and we have Klingons, and now they're speaking Klingon, and I just love just the talk and all this. I love that, and
Hmm.
so I put like some of those stresses, like if one of my characters will say something like "arat," it kind of gives me that Klingon feel, and all they're saying is like stop or Ransuk miul. I can feel it, and I just love
Yeah.
that.
I
Arat
mean,
is sorry, go ahead, Andy.
it does sound like arrête, the French stop.
I was just about to
Um,
say that.
But it's not because I
have
took French.
Yeah.
Aaron,
Yeah.
have you seen the new episodes of Star Trek Discovery?
I have.
And do you understand what they're saying without the need for the subtitles?
Oh gosh, back in the day, probably, yeah. Now
Okay.
it's been, I mean, I don't want to date myself, but that was back way back.
Okay.
But no, I mean, and they do a lot more. The Klingon now is just, I don't know. I enjoyed it better before than what they're
Okay.
doing now.
Like, is it more like pronounced or more like, because they do a lot of like clicking sounds with their tongues, and so have they sort of leaned into that more and gotten more guttural in a way, or
Well, I
just
guess
has it changed?
it's shifted to me. It's shifted. I think they were trying to capture something, but some things were already, you don't need to touch because they're already great. But I think, and it's fine because it's nice. It's a nice element, and then people who are new to it they'll love it, and some of the older people will love it too. But I kind of just like the old school, and but it doesn't stop me from enjoying it.
I wonder if Mark Okrand, I hope I'm saying his name right, is, he's the creator of Klingon. I had to look it up because I forgot who it was. I wonder if he's like continued it, for this new series, if he's added new stuff, or if they shoot. Actually, I think he's still alive, born in 1948. So,
Well, they speak it a lot more now too in the
and
show.
so you said Arabic as well. Do you speak
Mhm.
Arabic or some of
I
it?
do not. I had a lot of Arabic friends years ago, and I used
Mhm.
to love to listen, to some of the songs, and I knew some of the songs, but no, I don't speak it though.
And you mentioned another language besides Arabic, and what was that?
Amharic.
Yeah, what is that?
That's actually one of the languages that's spoken in Ethiopia. Actually, you had mentioned, oh, now I can't remember the name. The Blue People, the movie.
Oh,
Avatar.
Avatar.
Yeah, that's actually one of the base languages they use for that too,
Oh,
was
freaking awesome.
Amharic, because it's a really, I like especially some of the sounds, like they have the K and it's like a k sound, and I like that. And my ex-husband is from Ethiopia. And
Mm.
so we used to kind of speak. I was never quite as good at it, but so we used to speak it, and I love some of the sounds. And that's what it is. It's when people are asking me, how are you creating? It's like I'm hearing and I'm feeling and I'm seeing. And that's what the word seems like it just sound like to me. And then I start doing research. Okay, is there another word? Or whatever. I don't want it to be a word that's in another language, but I want it to be my word. But it's very hard with all the languages. You don't know. Something's going to sound alike.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very true.
Mhm.
One
What were you
thing,
gonna
one
say?
thing that I found right now, or at the end of last year, I was working on a novel set in sort of a Viking-esque land, and so I was doing a lot of research into Old Norse words,
Ah,
and it's interesting how a lot of those words sound different in other languages, but then when you have them, put together in the Norse construction, they're very unique. And so it was interesting to sort of face this language. I really didn't get into the language. I sort of just bastardized Old Norse words
mhm.
and used them. But I feel like, for example, your use of arat
Mhm.
for stop. Did you find yourself subconsciously using words from other languages that you already knew and sort of bastardizing them to fit your
Not
language?
not intentionally. Like, there was a word, I think, well, the word batam. There is
Whoa.
actually a Amharic word that sounds very close to that. And I was like, oh, but it's too late. It's like, oh, it's okay, batam amaleko. It'll be fine. I'll just use it. Or, different things. I could say something like, "Kaun einzelne Achterach Ramadan Shakwe." I'm sure if somebody hears that, they'll hear something similar in different languages, but I don't know their language, so that's my
Was
language.
was that your language that you just spoke?
Yeah, that was
That
mine.
is freaking amazing. I am so impressed. Mine, if I remember to say I have in Raelic, which is my language, it was sto ano, which means sto was I. So you would say sto, and then well, either way, sto was the I, and then ano was the verb. And of course, I made it difficult in my opinion by I have conjugations in my language. So I
Mhm.
think that's why I gave up, because I was like doing the conjugation. When I created a verb, I would go ahead and just conjugate it for present,
Mhm.
past, imperfect,
Oh, no, no,
future.
no, no.
Yeah. I was doing all of that, and I want to find an easier way, because when I was going through French, I was the worst part of French is the freaking conjugations. When you get to the subjunctive, le subjunctif, I still don't know it, and it's been years. So
Yeah. It's the same for me with Spanish. When you get into that super complicated, past perfect, all of those things, would have, will have done, all of that, it's just like, fuck it, I give up.
Yeah. My advice to people who are wanting to learn that stuff is immerse yourself more in the language and don't worry so much about the grammar. Let it come to you, through conversation, and then worry about going back to the grammar. That's my opinion. I got around France just fine, actually, so well. Okay, I don't know where I'm going with this. Without the subjunctive is what I'm saying.
And do I remember any French?
I think bonjour. I think in Arabic, wouldn't I say marhaba?
Marhaba.
Marhaba, right?
Marhaba.
Is that how are you?
I don't remember. I don't know Arabic.
I don't know either. I actually knew I met somebody in California. I loved California because I got to meet so many different people from different countries. And I always would ask, where are you from? And can you help me with your language? Even if I wasn't learning it. And you would be surprised how many people turned me away.
Really?
Yeah, I was also I don't know if you could tell, but I was a very, very energetic, eccentric 17-year-old. So
not you.
Yeah, not me. I'm 25 and this is my calm down version. So
oh, you're just a baby. You guys are babies.
I'm a baby.
Yes.
I look like a baby the way Andy's holding me in the picture we put on Facebook.
I saw those.
Yeah, I have one on my dating apps. So Andy holding me, and I kept getting messages saying, "Is that your boyfriend or are you bi?" And I was like, "So you can put a caption under." And I said, "Not my boyfriend. This is my author friend." So,
how many messages did you get thinking that you were me?
Not many. Actually, not
That's
any.
Okay. You didn't actually have to answer that, Stevie. It was
I didn't put the one with me standing next to you because it makes me look like I'm 4 feet tall. So because it's so weird. The tables in the background are high top, so it makes you look normal size, and me like I'm 3 feet tall. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I think they took the picture from a really high angle to make it even more pronounced.
Bastards. Aaron, I want to talk more about languages, but now I want to know more about your book. So please tell us what book we're talking about today and a little bit about it.
We could talk about the new book. How about that one? The one that's coming out, since we'll do a reading from that one. So
okay, cool.
Called Corinto and Ayusi, and it is more high fantasy than epic fantasy, like I usually write. And normally my writing is R-rated, or this one is more PG. And go ahead.
I don't see you as an R-rated fantasy writer. You're so soft-spoken and just like the sweetest lady. And then I picture you writing decapitations or pillages or something.
Oh yeah, castrations. Sorry.
Whoa, that's awesome. I need to pick up the book. I'm so desensitized. Why do I even try to use that word anymore? Yeah, to because I love horror movies, so PG-13 action movies besides Star Wars. I'm just this is a little weak. There's no castrations going on.
Play a little skin here. Yeah, the people who know me, they read the books, the first series. They're always like, "Did you write that?" And I was like, well, yeah. They said, "What are you? I didn't know you were dark." I said, "I'm not dark. I write people. I write things. I mean, these are real things that happen, and bad things happen to people all the time." And so, and I do that. I like to write. This one is more, has a lot more magic in it. And I think, the tagline, it's not, it wasn't a prophecy. It wasn't a destiny or a birthright. It was choice. These people are choosing to do this. They're not trying to reclaim some orphan reclaiming a throne or something like that. Mm-hmm. And, it's their journey to discover who they are and if they want to help. Can they save the world? Can it be saved without them? Sure. Can it be saved as easily without them? No. But, it's about them discovering who they are and meeting some interesting people and some interesting protagonists that everyone who's read the book, they like the protagonist better than the main characters because of the way he's written. So,
really? You said they like the antagonist more.
I'm sorry. Yes, the antagonist more.
Oh, the antagonist. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I think Andy and I have talked about that in the past. That if you write because Andy loves villains, right, Andy?
Oh yeah.
So
Me too. I love a good villain.
I think I need to get more into villains. Mine are, I don't want to say weak. I haven't written that much yet. I mean, I just finished my third. Oh, that's some good news. I actually just finished the rough draft for my sequel to the Four Territories. Yay.
Hey,
yeah. 105,000 words. So I'm excited about it.
See, I'm trying to reach that. I'm trying to get to that. My first book was 400,000 words.
Whoa.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the opposite. Like you're trying to get up there.
No, I'm trying to learn how to write, get the verbosity in check. We got it down to 350,000. And then after a year, I did another pass on it, another edit on it. And this was The Rise of Nazil, the first book. And I got it down to 305,000. I'm currently doing it again. So this is the last time. And I'm at 253,000. So I'm feeling good about it.
Your Kindle reads must be awesome. Your KU reads.
They were. I've had it offline, off sale for a couple of months because I don't want anyone else reading it until I get it done. Put your sales. I don't care about my sales.
Yeah.
I want the book the best it can be.
Yeah, you want the best product you can put out there. I do have a question, and anyone that writes a lot, big books like you, I always ask what is your output a day? If you don't mind me asking.
No, it depends. Now, the science fantasy that I put out this year, now I wrote that first book in just a couple months, and that was taking care of family, you're working and all that. So I get some days I try to do at least 2,000 words at least, and I always get more than that. So about 5,000, maybe 6,500. It depends. If I'm really feeling it and my eyes are closed and I'm just typing away, I can get up over 10,000 words.
I love that feeling.
Yeah, it's getting the time to do it. That's the thing.
So let's get back to languages. Andy, any thoughts?
Well, actually, as usual, I did a little bit of research, and one thing that really struck me as interesting about this topic was how language shapes culture or culture shapes language. Like one thing that I've noticed in a lot of fantasy novels or historical fiction, you have personalities ascribed according to the language, or even in modern, you've got the very stiff German character who's very severe, and German has that severe sound to it. You don't hear very romantic German, whereas you don't have an Italian who's speaking about punctuality. I don't even know if the word exists in their language, but like you have these personalities that go with the language, and so then you've got the way they talk is sort of on par with those personalities. Germans are very precise. Japanese are very precise. You've got the French and the Spanish and the Latins and the Italians, and they talk this very flowing language, and that's sort of their personality. So I was interested as okay, so does the culture of the country affect the language, or does language shape the culture and the way of thought? And so I did a little bit of research on it, and I found that both sides of that both language influences culture and culture influences language. There's one professor of psychology at Stanford University gives an example of how the Russian language contains an extra distinction between light and dark blues. And it turns out that in tests, Russians are better able to discriminate shades of blue than those who speak other languages.
Interesting.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
There's this language of this tribe in Brazil that they don't have words for numbers. They don't have 10 or 100, but they have few or many. So they can't keep track of exact quantity. So that sort of shaped their culture, where they don't, maybe their monetary system isn't around specific coinage, where it's the relative value of products. They know that 100 coconuts, for a terrible example, will get them a house. So they know that they need to have many coconuts. And that's what sort of shaped their language. On the flip side of the coin, there's a professor of psychology at Cornell who says that the neural machinery used for language predates the emergence of language itself, meaning the way the brain structures the communication is older than language. You know, the brain is the chicken and the language is the egg, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So language has changed over time to fit the human brain and not the reverse. That there's a general consensus that language would have had to start out as a product of culture. However, because cultural evolution is faster than biological evolution, language would have changed quickly like other cultural products. So just like we see the dictionary expanding by thousands of words, hundreds of thousands of words, millions of words every year, that's changing the way that we communicate with each other. So now go back to ancient Egypt. It's an interesting thought. Maybe the ancient Egyptians had 20,000 words in their vocabulary, maybe 30, but you didn't have words like steel and everything else that comes from steel. You didn't have words like paper and everything else. And of course, modern technology and music. There's hundreds of thousands of words to describe music, but they probably didn't have all of those. So as society and culture has evolved over time, language has evolved too. So it's this interesting mix of cultures affecting language and languages affecting cultures.
So would that mean at the very beginning of a language's manifestation, does that mean the culture plays less on it? And then more so as time goes on, would you think? Because I'm having a hard time at the beginning figuring out how a culture could change a language. But then you said Russian had a different, they had different words for different shades of blue?
Yeah, more distinctions.
Why would that be? Why would you think that? Fish?
I don't know.
Vodka? Snow? I don't know. Ice?
Yeah. So but you know, like one thing, when I was doing research for Child of the Night Guild, the audiobook, I found this video on YouTube about this girl talking about the different accents of the United Kingdom. And she goes through each of the different accents, and then she gives like this, like in a joking sort of way, the sort of a hallmark of that region. For example, there's this region that's apple farmers, apple orchards and stuff. And so she's like, you know, the apple producers, they talk like this, round. And I don't know if that's actually the case, but it sort of sparked that thing as well. Okay, people who live in a certain area have to speak, or they develop language in a certain way, and it's very different from people who live 100 miles away, but the terrain is totally different. You know, it's sort of like how they say that human physiology evolves according to our environment. You know, people who live in environments have different physiology than people who live in hot environments, or high altitudes versus low altitudes, or forests versus deserts. You know, like depending on where humanity lives, they evolve accordingly. So I assume that language has done the same. You know, at the root of language is this need to communicate. We need to express what we want to say. We need to make our needs and our desires known in order to exist, right? To be happy, to exist in a peaceful society. So that was what drove language to be created in the first place. But then as language came about, then it adapted to the culture, and then culture adapted according to the language, and then like so it's sort of like this nonstop evolution of both language and culture.
You know, what bothers me, and it's a little off topic, is the fact that you reminded me of it when you said, you know, cross different terrains, they speak different dialects and stuff. It bothers me when people say they're learning Mandarin or they're learning Cantonese, because I've asked a Chinese guy and I was like, how do you speak with people who speak Mandarin if you only speak Cantonese? And he's basically like, I don't. And then some people say they can understand each other, and then there's people in China who only speak Mandarin, but most of them speak Cantonese. It's been so confusing to me. And then you can't even get around Hong Kong if you don't know Cantonese. Have y'all heard any of that stuff?
So you're just angry that people in another country speak another language?
It bothers me.
You're angry that they speak foreign?
I don't understand why they're both like really different languages apparently, and they're both like super difficult.
But so, remember how large China is, and how many people there.
Boku.
China's massive, so it's like it's one of the largest countries on Earth. So obviously the language is going to be very different in different regions. And the northern people would have been affected by the Mongolian language. The southern people would have been affected by the Indian language and the Southeast Asian. So then you do have sort of these languages evolving according to the neighbors. Because if, let's say, China had interacted with the Incas, the ancient Incas, let's say they were around at the same time, the language would have adapted because the Incas would have needed to speak, find a common ground between these two languages. But because they were interacting with the Chinese, I mean, the Indians, and, you know, there were different castes of India, different cultures. So then they would be shaped by their contact with these different societies. And then there's the Mongolians. But then there were also the, you know, the people living way up north in Russia, but there was very little interaction between the people in ancient Russia and the Chinese. So there's no crossover between the two languages. Whereas there was a good deal of crossover between the Chinese and the Europeans, thanks to trade, you know, Marco Polo, that whole thing. But then also the, you know, the Roman Empire had contact with the ancient Chinese. And so then there is a little bit of crossover in that Chinese shaped Roman culture. And I'm sure Roman culture left its mark on both the Chinese language and the culture. Not being from China, I can't tell you what it is, but I'm sure there was, you know, there's that imprint.
Yeah, that is awesome. Oh, Aaron, you have this language, right?
Yes.
You've created. How do you input it into your fantasy?
Well, different characters speak it, and, you know, you can see what they're saying down below, but they're interacting. Now, in the first book, it comes in about a third of the way in. I have a couple of characters who can speak it because it's this language, it's a lost language, so to speak. So they're interacting in English basically, except for very few players. And then later on, when these other characters come into the picture, then they start speaking back and forth and back and forth. But of course, you always know what they're saying at the bottom, so it's no problem.
Oh, so at the bottom of the ebook, you actually have the translation.
Oh, yes. It's wherever the language is spoken. I don't like to interrupt the dialogue because I did a lot of research and everyone's different. Some people want it at the end of the chapter. Some people want a footnote at the bottom of the page. And, you know, some people just want it in an index. And so I just make sure that it's available close so you don't have to keep flipping back to see what it was.
Is it hard to format for that?
No, not for me. I don't think so. And a lot of times I do try to put it in context. So you would, even if you didn't look, you would probably know what they were saying, or somebody will say something that would let you know. And a couple of places, someone's translating for someone else. And so you can, you know, you don't have to look back and you can see it. Oh, okay. He said plumage d'Actreon. Okay. You know, piercing the darkness or something like that.
I love it. Okay, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there like a saying or something cool that you could say for the podcast in your language? I know you've been saying it, but anything more?
Something.
I know.
How about the titles of the books? How about that?
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, for the Rise of Nazil, I don't use the for it. I just use Rise of Nazil, which would be Daikanai Tak Nazil. So, you know, so the Rise of Nazil is Daikanai Tak Nazil. And then for Seed of Scorn, it was Vinu Tak Vian. And Piercing the Darkness was, actually, it's not talk. I said talk means of, but it's the, so it would be Ramaded. So it would be Plumage Ramaded Treon for Piercing the Darkness.
That is so cool.
And then Thelandul Awaits. I always say Thelandur Roshai is Thelandul Awaits.
So you just, okay, Thelandor is just Thelandor.
Thelandul is the name of the world.
Thelandur.
Thelandul.
That's so hard.
It's not good. Hard.
It's not hard.
No, Thelandur Roshai. And, you know, that's how you say Thelandul Awaits.
Kind of, when you say shy, and that sounded Elvish to me, which...
Roshai?
I don't know. I tried to learn Tolkien's language. I don't know why I did it, but yeah.
No.
I think that was the nerdiest thing I've ever done, was try and learn that language. And that was
cool.
Yeah. So Andy, what do you think about us getting to the reading?
Yes, for sure. We're just the word of the week first.
Oh yeah.
Word of the week.
All right, so the word of the week is perfect for our topic, or I think it's perfect. And the word is silver-tongued.
Ooh, what's that?
Someone with a silver tongue is someone who is eloquent and persuasive. So, you know, you have people who are who are very, they can flatter someone. Oh, you and your silver tongue, or they can, they can sell ice to an Eskimo, as the expression goes. Basically, anyone who can talk someone into doing something easily is silver tongued.
You're talking about me. Stevie is silver tongued.
I don't think so, Stevie, but that's okay.
Oh, wow. What's up, Andy?
I was going to say, we're going to say yes just to make you feel good.
Yeah, just please me. Yes. Don't hurt my self-esteem. Okay. So you having books that are upwards 400,000 words, I kind of figured we're going to be reading like 10,000 worth of words. So for this, the way we do it is we usually have the author tell Andy and I what parts we're going to play.
Yes, so she told us beforehand. I'm going to read the narrator.
Yeah, he's got the black part.
Okay.
Yeah, she's going to read the stuff in red, and you're going to be purple dude.
I'll be purple dude. Okay, is anything I should know about purple dude?
Purple dude is in pain. That's
he's in pain. Okay.
He's in pain. Yeah, purple dude's in pain.
And he's a man?
He's a man, yes. His name is Foley. The main character, his name is Elielu. That's how you pronounce that. It's Elielu.
Elielu. Wow. So we're gonna screw up the pronunciation of her
That's fine.
Terribly.
Okay.
This is from the new book, so this is not the deep, epic, hard. This is the lighter, high fantasy. Corinto, now you will see.
Okay.
All right.
I'm ready when y'all are.
Glasses.
All right. Here I go. All right. Elielu shuttered the windows of his chamber, glancing over to the sealed archway in the corner. It had been several full moons since he'd entered the space, only sending his projected form into the room. He began to do so more of late. He didn't want to face what lay behind the wall delusion he'd created. However, as the Sanguis approached, he had no other choice. The vulnerability he felt was unsettling. This one element, this one presence, appeared to weaken him more than any other. Weakness was not something he wanted attributed to him. He took a calming breath, stepping into the shadows of the room. After resting a hand over the cool stone, he focused on the mark on his wrist. For a moment, he didn't move. He stared at the faint mark, the reddish hue against his pale flesh. It had never fully formed, or so he'd been told. He couldn't truly harness the elemental powers or feel their presence. He was meant to be less, never truly one of his people.
My people.
His eyes flared with that thought.
I'll be the most powerful.
He sneered, thrusting his hand forward.
You allow me mere remnants of your truths and imbue those inferior with your puissance.
He closed his eyes, concentrating on the energies within him.
Kishira.
As the last syllable resonated off the stone, the edges of an archway appeared. The edges glowed with the brightness of 1,000 fires. The heat created by the phenomenon radiated throughout his body.
Kishira,
he said with more intensity. A flash of bright light filled the room, appearing more as an immense and momentary volcanic eruption before only the glowing edges of the archway remained. Elielu stepped beneath the lintel, entering the cool, dank room. Minimal light lit the small space through the one covered crescent window carved into the stone. He stared over at the immobilized man against the wall. He sat motionless, unable to feel, hear, or see anything, appearing more of an effigy than a man. Though years had passed, he looked as he did when he'd first been brought to the tower. That perfect, handsome image, unmarred or affected by time. Elielu didn't want to injure him, but he wouldn't release him either. That feeling was one he couldn't admit, but the truth sat there before him, mocking him. Seeing the man evoked emotions he didn't wish to face, but he wouldn't allow that weakness, that debilitating sliver of humanity to surface. He focused on his objectives, forcing back whatever feelings attempted to penetrate the disciplined demeanor that he'd cultivated. There were answers he held, pieces of a puzzle long forgotten or obscured. Elielu couldn't discern which, and that uncertainty angered him. He was the key needed to unlock the powers of his people. Once he learned those truths, the beast would provide the rest.
Hojader,
Elielu whispered, releasing the man from the enchantment he'd placed over him. He continued his stare, observing the torpid form begin to reanimate. The man coughed, inhaling a deep and stinging breath. He steadied himself against the wall, nearly collapsing to the floor from the sudden movement.
Ah, it's good to have you back, Foley. I trust you've rested well.
Foley continued to cough, wincing as he glared up at him.
Elielu?
After all these years, that's still the first question you pose. Who else would you expect to greet you? There's only you and me now, Foley. As I've said before, mine will be the last face you'll ever see.
Is that meant to be a threat?
A threat? No, my good man. I offer it as a comfort. Isn't it a pleasant thought to know that we'll always be together?
He grimaced, reorienting himself to his limbs.
What? What happened to you? Why are you doing this? We loved you, the both of us.
Alielu's hand shot forward in a blur, clasping Foley around the throat.
Don't ever mention her to me. Never. I don't need your love. Not then and certainly not now.
Foley gagged, coughing again as he released his throat.
Say what you will. Your actions belie your words.
Belie?
Foley strained to speak. Belie.
You might keep me imprisoned, but you only imprison yourself. Each time you awaken me, it's a glimpse into a mirror, into your past and who you really are. You've allowed the teaching of the shades and their demon goddess to cloud your mind and corrupt your heart. That darkness will consume you, Elielu. Please, don't continue this. Whenever you appear to me, I can tell more of who you are is being siphoned away. You've aged even beyond my years in but a few. This isn't you. It's never been you.
Elielu smirked, taking a seat on the lone chair in the room.
You're consistent, aren't you? Any power worth having requires a sacrifice. The shades of thaumaturgy haven't weakened me. They provided me strength and lent me their powers.
Their powers, not yours. When something belongs to you, no one can ever take it away. You've never understood that or learned how powerful and unique you truly are. Don't allow their deceptions to control you, please. You would have learned what you seek in time. You were always meant to acquire the truths and be taught to harness your abilities. You're powerful on your own, Elielu. You don't need them. It's not too late to return to who you are. You're better than this, and Shreya would have helped you to understand that you caused.
Foley's shrieking screams echoed off the wall as a burst of energy from Aleu's hand suffused him. Alielu gasped, retracting his hand and staring down at it as if it was something foreign. That power, that surge of energy had only manifested one other time. Then he couldn't stop it, not like now. But he couldn't summon it as he should be able to. It only manifested when his conscious control faltered, a feral response replacing his cognitive perspicacity. Alielu clenched his fist with that truth. He needed to learn to focus and control his power, and he would. A whimper from Foley claimed his attention. He straightened his hair, regaining his composure.
I've ordered water heated for a bath, and there's a meal and fresh clothing awaiting you. I'm certain that you're famished.
Kill me, Elielu, please. I'd rather die now than to see you become this monster. Please, deliver me to the bosom of Yomajan and allow me to rest at Shreya's side.
Rest? No, my dear Foley. Your goddess, Yomajan's arms shall remain empty. You've answers to provide and a new era to witness.
I don't know anything. Don't you understand? I don't know what you want. You killed her. She was going to tell you, and you killed her.
But I won't kill you, Father. You'll just wish that I had.
Very nice. Awesome.
Great job, guys.
Very cool. I loved it.
Thank you.
I love the diction in it. The vocabulary was so it was like reading a poem, actually. It was very nice.
Well, thank you.
I think that's my goal for 2018 is to write more in like that. I think that would I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad. That'll be out this year. So
so with that, Erin, where can we find you?
You can find me on my website at erinmichaelhall.com, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just come and get me.
And the Aaron Michael Hall, do you have any dashes in that?
No,
No,
not
okay, so it's
for the
all
website.
one. All right, awesome. And what was the title of the book again?
This the book we just read.
Yes.
That is Corinter Nayusi.
Okay, and that's the English form, right?
Yes, actually, Nayusi is a Swahili word that means black because there are these panthers. But anyway, Corinter Nayusi.
Swahilic is from the culture that lives on the coast of Africa, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, my grandmother was Kenyan and she actually spoke Swahili.
That is so cool. That is so cool. All right. Well, I think that's going to be it for today. Andy, anything else you want to add?
Nope, I'm good. That was awesome. I had a ton of fun.
What about next week's guest? Do you know?
Yes, I do. Give me 1 second because Right. So next week we are having Kevin Kessler, who was our first ever guest on the Fantasy Fiends podcast. Our first
crazy.
Returning guest.
Cool.
That's awesome. All right. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a blast.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
I wanted to say something cool to that, but I don't know what to say. All right. So we will see you guys next week on the Fantasy Fiends podcast. I hope everybody enjoys the new year and continues with their what's that word, Andy? Resolutions. Yes. Mine is to stop biting my fingers, and I've been so far successful.
That's awesome.
TMI, right?
A little bit.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Aaron, thank you so much for being with us this week.
I enjoyed
Have
it.
an awesome evening.
Yes.
Have an awesome evening.
Bye.
Bye.